I've lost my mom.
Hello, Herr. I hope my experience can be in a video. I love your work. My name is Sophia. I'm 26 years old, single, and work for a digital marketing company in Mexico City. A position that, despite paying me well, often left me on edge. And that day, in particular, had been one of those. My boss, a man in his 50s with an alarming lack of patience, kept calling me every half hour. Every time the phone rang, I already knew that another round of pressure would come from the other end. And as if the universe wanted to test my patience, my ex, John, decided it was the perfect day to make an appearance in my life again. He showed up in my message inbox after months of silence. I didn't have the courage to open it. It was 8:30 p.m. as my watch on my phone showed. After spending almost 10 hours at the office, with a stack of unanswered papers and emails, all I wanted to do was go back to my apartment, soak in a hot bath, and get away from the stress of the day. Walking to the subway, I tried to clear my mind. The bustle of traffic, the street vendors, and the murmur of people's conversations around me seemed to intensify with every step I took. Once inside the station, I noticed that it was more crowded than usual. It was to be expected in such a large city. However, I managed to find a corner where I could lean and wait for my stop to arrive. But amidst the sea of anonymous and tired faces, a small figure emerged. It was a little girl, no bigger than any first grader. Her teary eyes contrasted with her tousled brown hair. She approached me, shy but determined, as if she had chosen to talk to me out of all that crowd. "Can you help me? I've lost my mom," she told me in a trembling voice, on the verge of bursting into tears. Her look made me momentarily forget my bad day. I felt a pang in my chest, an instinctive desire to help her. "Sure, little girl," I replied, crouching down to her level. "Where did you last see your mom?" Instead of answering me, however, she took my hand firmly. His little hand was cool and slender. He led me down the station aisles, moving us through the people. "Where are we going?" I tried to ask, but the little girl just squeezed my hand tighter. With every step she took, I had the feeling that every second stretched her tighter and tighter. The flickering lights of the subway played on my nerves, making me jump at the slightest shadow. And it's not that I was scared of the paranormal, but because we live in a third world country and we always have to be careful. After what seemed like hours, we arrived at a section of the subway with less traffic of people. We were near one of the exits to the street. The air was thick, with a strange smell, like an unpleasant mixture of humidity and urine. I could almost feel the moisture on my skin, and my hair was starting to stick to my forehead from the sweat of the fast walk we took. I looked at the little girl, who had stopped and was watching me with her teary, fear-filled eyes. "There's my mommy." She pointed her trembling little finger toward a spot in the hallway. I could almost be sure she was pointing toward one of the walls. My eyes tried to adjust to the gloom to see the woman the girl was referring to. But no one was there. At least not a woman who looked worried about losing a child. A wave of cold suddenly hit me, as if someone had left a freezer door open behind me. I quickly bent down to ask her who she meant, or at least to comfort her. But when I looked down, she was gone, Herr. Gone. The cold little hand that had been holding mine was no longer there, but still the chill and that feeling of having someone right next to me remained. Panic came over me. It was so much fear in that instant that I couldn't help but let out a scream. The few people nearby looked at me, but went on their way when they saw that nothing was happening. But they did not know what I had just experienced. Without wasting any more time, I almost ran to the platform and took the next train that passed. As an extra fact that maybe has nothing to do with it, but I'll tell you anyway, I'm a person who likes horror, but I had never had the experience of seeing a ghost, and I swear that for months I asked the universe to give me the opportunity to live something like that. Now I regret it, and I want it to serve as advice to all those who listen to me. Be careful with what you ask for.
The Immutable Man.
Greetings to your audience and to you, Herr. My pseudonym is Bespin Gant. I follow you on Twitch, and although I can't be on live, I usually watch the replays. I love your live streams there, they are so much fun. It was 2017, and I was working in a small restaurant in the middle of the city center. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it paid the bills and gave me a little extra money to go out on the weekends. Every morning I took the subway. It was about 7:15 a.m. when I got on. I liked to watch the people, each one with their own problems, on their way to work, school, or any other destination. And it was in the middle of that routine that I saw him. At first I didn't think anything of it. After all, the subway was full of people, and it was not unusual to see the same faces every day. But there was something about a certain old man that caught my attention. He was wearing a washed-out blue shirt with a brown jacket that was clearly too big for him and worn black pants. He had the look of someone who has lived too long and seen too much. His face looked very old, as if he were 90 years old, and as such, it seemed that he could not even move his extremely fragile body. The detail is why he looked familiar to me, and that is that he was always there, sitting in the same seat, staring at the floor. Whenever I got on around 7:15, I would always see him. If it was shortly before or shortly after, he was no longer in his seat. Days and days went by, and I began to wonder if he ever got off. So I started watching him in more detail. At first, I thought maybe he had mental problems, that he was lost, or that he just enjoyed spending hours on the subway. But every day, as I watched him, I began to realize something. He never moved. Never. Over time, I began to develop a kind of obsession with him. I constantly wondered about his story. Who was he? Why was he always there? Did he have a family? I even went so far as to imagine that maybe he had experienced something traumatic, and the subway was his refuge. The following days were the same. I would get on the train, and there he was, unperturbed. His presence generated in me a mixture of curiosity and fear. But what disturbed me most was that, no matter what time I saw him, he always wore the same clothes, always looked at the ground, and never, ever moved. Talking about this with my friends or family was out of the question. I knew they would think I had gone crazy, or that I was exaggerating, or they would surely give me 1,001 logical explanations as to why that gentleman was there. But I, who lived it firsthand, knew it was not normal. So I decided to keep it to myself. One night, while I was trying to sleep, an idea crossed my mind. What if I tried to talk to him? Maybe if I did, I could get myself out of that obsession and stop thinking about him. But every time I worked up the courage to do so, something in his blank stare paralyzed me. It was as if he was seeing something we couldn't see. It was disturbing. Days passed, and my curiosity and fear intensified. How was it possible that no one else noticed? Was everyone so immersed in their routines that they didn't notice this man's strange presence? Sometimes, I wondered if I was the only one who saw him, if he was some kind of manifestation that only revealed himself to me. One morning, after weeks of torturing myself with these questions, I mustered the courage to approach him. At a slow pace, trying not to draw attention to myself, I sat down on the seat next to him. Out of the corner of my eye, I tried to observe every detail, every wrinkle on his face, looking for some hint of humanity. But to no avail. He didn't seem to breathe. He didn't make a sound. He showed no sign of life. I wanted to speak to him. I wanted to break the silence, but something stopped me. An irrational fear. What if, when I spoke to him, he turned to me with empty eyes? What if, when I tried to communicate with him, I was trapped in his own limbo? In my mind, the possibilities were endless, and all of them terrifying. Due to personal and family issues, I had to quit my job at the pharmacy. Although I regretted it at first, I soon realized it was an opportunity to leave that obsession behind. As you, Herr, and your audience will know, many true horror stories end in a mystery, and this is one of those. Thank you for reading me.
You'll see the same colors.
My name is Raquel. I live in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I was 24 years old, and at that time, I was dating a girl named Mariana. She was, and still is, a woman with many interests, and one of them was mysticism. To me, the truth is that spirituality and things like that have never appealed to me. But Mariana was at a stage where she wanted to explore that. She said that there were energies around us that we didn't see, and that we had to tune in. I don't know. It all sounded like a movie to me. One afternoon, after leaving work, Mariana told me that a colleague had recommended a lady who read tarot cards. I seriously tried not to burst out laughing, but a mocking smile came out. Mariana looked at me with those little eyes she used to make when she wanted something. "Come on, Raquel. I'll only be a while, and I'd be happy if you'd come with me." Of course, I couldn't say no. So we went to the old tarot reader's house. It was an old house, located on a quiet street. What caught my attention the most was that peculiar smell when we entered. It smelled old, like those books you find in your grandmother's house that are older than you are. The lady greeted us with a friendly smile, although her eyes seemed to be in another world. The atmosphere felt dense, and everything was dark, except for a few candles that illuminated the main room. Mariana, excited, sat down in front of the old lady while I stood there, observing the place. There were symbols and objects I didn't recognize everywhere, but I tried not to make a big deal of it. The old lady took the cards, and with slow and measured movements, began to shuffle them while she asked Mariana general questions. It all seemed like a typical card reading, talking about work, love, and such things. But there was a moment when the atmosphere changed. The old lady stopped and said in a serious and slightly distant voice, "Soon you will experience a clear sign from God. You will see the same colors." I looked at Mariana, expecting her to laugh or something, but she was pale. The old lady continued as if nothing happened and finished reading. We got out of there and Mariana was restless. She kept asking me about that phrase on the way back. "What do you think it means, Raquel? Is it something related to my work as a designer?" she asked, looking at me hopefully. "I don't know, Mariana," I answered, trying to reassure her. "But don't get obsessed with it. Maybe they are just random words." However, no matter how hard I tried to play it down, I couldn't get that phrase out of my head. Sign of God? Colors? I didn't know, but I would soon understand what he meant. A week later, Mariana and I decided to go downtown. As usual, we opted to take the subway, or as we say here, the subte. What happened next was, as I told you at the beginning, something I can't get out of my head. Although it wasn't terrifying in the traditional sense, it was strangely unsettling. And I don't know whether to wish I had stayed home that day, or to be grateful for the experience I had. As we were talking, at the next station, a gentleman got on dressed in a rather peculiar way. Bright blue suit and yellow pants, an unusual and extremely striking combination. It struck me as curious, but I didn't think anything of it. the city is full of unusual characters. However, what seemed like a fluke turned into something stranger. 2 stations later, another man in the same clothes got on. Then, a woman, and soon after, another man, all dressed in the identical blue suit and yellow pants. Mariana looked at me with wide eyes, and I was just as surprised. I leaned closer and whispered in her ear, "Is this a joke? Are we in a hidden chamber?" At each station, more and more people in the same clothes climbed in. There was no room for anyone else to enter, and the carriage was full. But what was truly disturbing was not their attire, but their behavior. None of them interacted with each other. They were all distant, as if they did not know each other, all with lost looks, as if in a trance, immersed in their own worlds. Mariana, in a trembling voice, said to me, "Raquel, do you remember about the colors?" The tarot reader's phrase echoed in our minds. I nodded, unable to utter a word. I didn't know if it was the prediction of the cards or just the fact that we were surrounded by people dressed alike, but we both sensed that something wasn't right. It was an atmosphere of tension and fear, a silence that was not normal in a usually noisy subway. As the train moved forward, we noticed that every time the doors opened, someone in that outfit came out, and at the same time, someone in identical clothes came in. Mariana and I felt trapped, watched, even though neither of them was looking directly at us. We held hands, trying to convey to each other some sense of security. When we reached our destination, we ran down the car, pushing as many people as we could, and exited the subway with a sigh of relief. Mariana was on the verge of tears. I was trying to stay calm, but inside I was just as scared. What the hell had we just lived through? I wondered. Days passed and we never saw those people again. Mariana stopped taking the subway for a while, and I, even though I tried, couldn't help but feel paranoid every time I got on, looking around every corner, hoping to run into that crowd of blue suits and yellow pants again. I don't know if it was a sign from God, a paranormal manifestation, or if it was just a weird coincidence, but I can tell you that from that day on, my perception of reality changed. Things you consider normal can twist in an instant and show you a side of reality you would never have imagined. The only thing I know is that there are always things we can't explain, and that experience in the subway is one of them.